let's call a meeting to order and move quickly if we can. Because I heard Julie, I heard you.
It's ambitious.
So in any case, let's move on. Can we call the meeting to order, and then let's accept can I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from our last meeting?
And we'll set the minutes.
Second it.
I've read them.
All those in favor? Aye.
David, aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Great. All right, let's move on then. Planners report.
I don't have anything additional to add to it. If you have a chance to read through it, or if you have any questions, I'll happily answer them, but I don't have anything additional.
I had a question and I forgot what it was. Just a moment.
All right. Well, I guess that helps. So let's move on again.
Well, wait a minute. Sorry, I had a question.
Oh, do you?
Do you know if the town meeting passes the MBTA district, if the additional funds will be enough?
We have to apply for them first, right? So if
Any idea which?
It's $5 million is available in the program each year. So if we are successful in getting the MBTA communities past November 12th, we would have to apply for those funds. But I think if we even need to apply for those funds, we have a strong chance to get it.
Okay.
I mean, we are probably, I don't know this for certain, but we are probably the only, if not maybe one of the only communities that have proposed a district where a development is already approved to go in. So that will, I'm sure, be looked favorably upon. So obviously when the state gives out money, they want to see that it's being used effectively. So I would imagine that, yeah, we would stand a very good chance of getting the funds if it is even needed to apply for those grant funds. I'm hopeful that we actually do not need to. We're speaking with the state. There are some. So for that fiscal year 23 of the Housing Works Infrastructure Program grant that we get the $3.6 million to put in the sewer and water, there are other towns that obviously got grant money during that grant round. At least one or two of the towns, we were told, their projects are coming in low as far as funds. So which is a miracle. So there might be additional funds left through that fiscal year to be able to throw at us to help us obtain that gap. And then the state would be more than happy to amend our contract to give us more if it's available. So that is a possibility as well.
It sounds all good. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David. So moving on then to the EDC's focus projects for 24, the zoning bylaws, there's been a lot of stuff going back and forth the last couple of days that we've all been CC'd on, I believe. At this point, I see that no action is necessary. It's been referred to the planning board. I assume that we're still in the information gathering stage, and that the more information we can compile, the better off we'll be, and the more able we'll be to make a recommendation to the planning board, because planning board is the one that will be the leader on this, if I understand correctly. Correct, Michael?
Yeah. So the EDC, I forget when, but it was earlier this summer. I penned a letter on behalf of the EDC to suggest taking up this item to the planning board, right? Mm-hmm. So they haven't taken any action on it. They've been bogged down with MBTA communities and other bylaw changes that are on for this town meeting. But I will bring it up again with them after town meeting to sort of get a firm answer from them as to whether or not they are even want to entertain taking this on for the next town meeting. I sort of doubt that they'll say no, especially if the EDC wants to assist with it and bring something forward. So, but as of right now, there's no there's no action, like I listed in the agenda item, there's no action needed right now to be taken on this. The EDC already acted on it. It's really just a carryover to ensure that it's not lost along the way if EDC wants to maintain this as a goal.
Okay, two questions. Now we have until April, we might be able to go back to the thing I said was hard to do, which was to examine other towns for other uses other than labs R&D. Now I've been looking at other bylaws locally and so on for the labs research. I may be able to do that as well. So for the next meeting, I might, don't promise, be able to bring up some, oh yeah, maybe we can add these as appropriate businesses for Upton. So I will offer to do that in time for the planning board to have it ready for April. Responses today I need time to look at. So if we want to make any specific, I propose that we kick that agenda to next meeting.
Okay, I do want to thank everybody though for being fully engaged and trying to collect the information necessary to give it some due consideration. I understand it's a potentially pretty impactful decision if we were to try and propose and accelerate adoption of a bylaw. I can understand Craig's perspective, and I certainly understand the other side of the coin as well. So I want to encourage ourselves to stay open-minded and continue to gather information so we can pass it on in a rational manner. So thank you, both of you, Craig and David, for being so engaged. Okay. Moving on, we'll move on to the public parking vision and the earmarks, solicitation of bids and bids received. Michael, you want to address that?
So I had sent around, or included with your meeting materials tonight, just a couple of examples of parking plans, parking master plans, parking studies, whatever they're called. And so, I offered that as, a chance to skim through them and evaluate the contents of those plans and to get a feeling of what exactly we'd be looking for a plan, right? So a lot of what I found is that there's a lot of parking plans, parking studies that are done for obviously larger towns or cities that have a really high parking demand in those areas, but also universities trying to figure out what to do with all their parking, colleges and universities, right? So URI had one, and I forget which else, but those popped up a lot. So there's always obviously a, as with most of these studies, a review of existing conditions and review of demand, or I should say analysis of demand and an analysis of potential future demand and ways in which to help direct and mitigate problems, but also opportunities. It can. Let me see if I can pull one up so I can reference. And I also did, separately from that, I did reach out to Stantec, who's an engineering firm that we use a lot on the planning board and the zoning board for peer review analysis. So what I found was that Stantec does...
They did the Lowell one, didn't they?
Yeah, they did the Lowell one. And then on their website, they advertise themselves as being like a go-to parking study engineering firm on behalf of the state. So I guess they've done a lot of work through what is formerly DHCD, now the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities. So they have a lot of, anyway, a lot of experience doing these types of plans. So I had reached out to them to get a basic scope and potential cost of services, but unfortunately I just haven't heard back from them yet. But I'm hoping to get something back from them to kind of help us along there. I mean, this is all just to say, like, a lot of these studies, as I'm finding, like I said, they're for larger towns and these small cities even. So that's not to dissuade us away from doing this. It's just to say that maybe a parking plan for Upton doesn't have to be so doesn't have to have the huge scope of services that maybe like the Lowell parking study does, right? Because we're not gonna we're obviously not the same.
Yeah,
So
it seems like
now-
overkill.
Sorry, now you've clarified that the intention is for us to basically look at the table of contents, the methodology. I mean, Lowell's 20 times the size of us.
Yes.
So they don't have the richness. But one thing that did strike me is that they have a solid economic plan. So the parking
Mhm.
isn't just for current need, it's for future need. And we don't. Except it's unlikely we'll densify downtown. No. Hello, Michael. Right. Oh, there it is. Well, it's unlikely we'll densify downtown to the same extent that they're talking about.
Mhm. I think, it's clear that we're very different than most
Yeah.
of the that we're talking about. I think, Julie, you really hit the nail on the head in the work that you did, in the sense of,
Yeah.
parking is our downtown. So it's like our downtown landscape is dominated by parking lots,
Yeah.
and with a few architectural features sprinkled in. So, the task that we have is trying to figure out how parking and the redesign of parking can somehow be converted into the heart of the community, and linking parking uses, or having multiple uses out of a parking infrastructure that creates a vital downtown. Right now, it's, I think, again, the work that you did, Julie, kind of highlights, I wouldn't say blight, but something close to that, and big gaps in our downtown environment. And, we have this opportunity right now, with some of the money, to revision how parking can be a multi-purpose, potentially a multi-purpose infrastructure use. But again, I think the work that you did in sitting down there and compiling your thoughts, and then visually presenting them, was fantastic. I don't know if everybody has had a chance to look at that, but it's certainly more than a starting point.
Oh,
And,
thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's great. Very nice presentation, without a doubt.
Thanks.
Cohesive,
It was fun.
comprehensive. It had a nice flow all the way through. And
It's something that obviously means a lot to all of us. So it's something I was happy that my husband took the kids. We went down together, and then he went home, and I just stayed, and I kind of moved throughout the whole town common. I spent like 3 hours and just kind of watched. And something we said in one of our meetings, I feel like it was Joe that said it, or Eugene, that we have plenty of parking. It's just highlighting what it is and connecting it. And I felt like I had a different perspective too, coming down with my family and being like, oh, Stella can't walk through here safely. Like, this is scary. Like, Stella's going to get injured. And then I like sat in front of our beautiful town hall, and I'm like, oh, there's a great little stone wall here. If there's something like that, I felt like she could walk on the sidewalk and I wouldn't be worried about her running into the street. It's like,
Julie,
and not everywhere, but in some spots, if we have control over something like that.
could I,
Sorry,
David, before you interrupt, I just wanted to ask that we add some structure to this discussion. I think, Julie's done far more work than any of us have on this particular issue. We had a homework assignment that I was delinquent on and didn't get some comments to Michael until tonight about. I think, I don't know if anybody else did, but Julie has clearly led a pretty substantial effort, and I'd really like to give her the time to present her own work and her thoughts about it, because this was the core of our homework assignment. I'd like to give it the time it deserves without interruption, and hold our comments until after Julie told your story and how you came to do the work that you did. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah, are we at that point? I don't mean to take away from Mike's point of where he was at with the parking too, where I did go through the Lowell presentation as well, and I felt like there was a little takeaway there, that the idea of taking the parking and combining it with, say, like the residential use, or the the public use and the business use, and they showed like a good diagram of it, like all layering together, and it's like a little parking garage. Like that was kind of the one gem from it. Most of it I felt like was a little bit too, they're just so much bigger than us that it felt like if we did that full blown of a study, it would feel just overkill in comparison because we're just so small.
Mhm.
But I don't know if anyone else want to comment on that before we got into this.
Well, I just thought it was part of the, where we are in the agenda, from my perspective, is squarely here. I mean, Michael has presented, the work that the background work that he's done and actually provided us materials in that regard. We've all just stated that, they seem a little bit inappropriate, in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And we're trying to accomplish, like I said, a lot that's not necessarily about parking. And that's why I think it's a good point to lead into the work that you've done.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. I don't know if you want to start at the top, Mike, since you're already sharing.
Yeah.
So to me, I think we've even mentioned this before, just the obvious thing, going back to the scope. And I feel like I need to preface this where I defer to you all in that you've lived here longer, and there's definitely going to be things in the scope that I address that you're like, oh, this is something we can't possibly do because there's a bit of information I probably don't know. So this is my no bars, big dreams, anything's possible, because I took you at face value when you said that, Gene. I was like, all right, I will ask for everything that I can have if there's no restrictions on this hypothetical. So here is the town hall. It just makes sense if everything kind of ties back to those materials, because this isn't going anywhere. It makes sense design-wise if we're going to use the same materials and replicate them throughout the downtown area by having the brick that is in the town hall and seeing some slate. I feel like you see that detail in the town hall as well. And having that in the crosswalks would be beautiful. If they could do some sort of stamped concrete decorative pattern, that would definitely be over our budget, but that seems like something we could negotiate. What else do I want to call out here? I don't want to like read it. No one needs me to read it right off of it, but I can hear Laura laughing in the background. I recognize that giggle from my neighbor. But I thought a lot about the different towns I've seen in New England that I love and where they fit in and different things we could pull in. And I wanted to pull references with the thought that if we are going to pay some design firm to do more research into what the right fixtures and materials are, I want to give them some sort of guidepost. So Newburyport is the bottom right image there. They have some nice stone steps, like even if someone wanted to sit on a step somewhere, just have other opportunities for people to stop and pause and just make it feel cohesive. So I'm just calling out the materials in further detail here. You can go to the next page.
I love that, Julie, not to interrupt. I do love that idea of even you have these side by side replacing, not necessarily, I mean, I understand this stone facade is, probably attractive for some, but that like terraced situation, I love that idea.
Yeah, I feel like it's an addition to. It's not for that one. Like, I don't think you would change that. You need that because I have a soft spot for stone walls. There's a lot of history to that, but I just think it's something like that would be complementing to each other. In the crosswalks, if you want to, actually, it might be my screen. I want to see more of the. Can you close your tools on the left, and we'll see the rest of it. Yeah. So the crosswalk, this spot. David, you sent me an email earlier. They're going to redesign this angle. So maybe this problem's going to go away.
Since you're on the subject, what I wanted to say, first of all, a couple of things. As I said to you privately, this is great work. And what I like about it is it can be applied. If we have a single vision, it can be applied incrementally. It's not like what failed earlier this decade, where we expected one person to come in and do it all. But what we've talked about since then, but not done anything about, is have a single unified vision, which we can do incrementally. I think it's great you've done that. Now, I pointed out to you, the TIP project will happen within a it's still 3 or 4 maybe years off, but it will happen. It'll change some of the dynamics that you're talking about here.
Yeah.
So I was suggesting that you take that in mind. That cuts both ways. It will change what you're dealing with, but
Mhm.
also there's still the opportunity for your ideas to be fed back to the state. So, for example, on page 100 and something or other, there's a design for crosswalks, which is black and white stripes. If we get the chance in the 75% hearing to say, no, we want these brick walks because they fitted with the design vision that we have adopted, there's time to do that.
Yeah.
So think about it in those terms too. That's what I wanted to say
Absolutely.
before. Yeah, that because it affects a lot of what you say in minor ways. But this is a
Yeah.
major way.
This is where what I do for a living is I love feedback, and that's where you guys fill in the other parts. We all know different facts and information. It's like together we're going to make a better design and have a better presentation. So I've been looking forward to hearing what you guys think about this too. So I can present, but I kind of want to hear what you guys think about it along the way as well. So this part is just it was fine to cross the street on this day because there was a cop there, so you could safely go. But it's scary otherwise because people are coming around that corner and they don't know there's a crosswalk there either. It's not like the motorist's fault, but and I was talking to Craig because he was there on the common working his other stint on the preservation committee, the historic preservation committee. And you had the good idea, Craig, of what if it was a raised crosswalk too? Like for that one, that would slow people
Those
down.
in Amherst, yeah. They're
Well,
raised and they flash too, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think at the
I think
very
it-
least you could have flashing lights. Yeah.
That'll be something that DOT will have to do. I mean, part of the job is going to have to be to calm the traffic to the roundabout. So
Yeah.
you can expect it to be physically better, but
Yeah. I was thinking the
Aesthetically-
roundabout will slow them down. That's
Yeah.
why I wrote just the flashlights in the end, but
and
the flashing lights.
aesthetically though, you can still influence them. That's what I want to see.
yeah. And it sounds like we're at the right point too, where they're not too close to doing those things that we can't change something like that.
Sorry, go on.
So you can keep scrolling down.
By the way, guys,
Hold on.
the
There we go. Sorry.
the state plan is 115 pages, and I threw it at Julie about 2-3 hours ago. So good job even looking at it.
Julie, do you
Well,
want me
I
to
looked
do
at
it further down or is this good?
No, this is good. You sent me the condensed one because I came home at 6:45 and looked at my email. I was like, oh, David wrote something to me because I was working up until we went to the trunk or treat. So I skimmed the condensed one, David, and I was like, oh, okay. So that's my history of the TIP project. It's like, all right, but that's why we're together. I want to hear the information. I want to learn what's coming.
So this
And
is-
this is just go ahead.
I mean, this is a great view, and from my perspective, to kind of frame the whole challenge. I mean, you look at it. There's a tremendous amount of pavement downtown.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's what we saw when we were trying to do the visioning process. That there's way too much pavement and not a lot of green space.
Yeah.
And you look at, as I said, you look at the downtown area, it's dominated by parking. It's church parking, it's the community center parking, it's the parking by Racine and Rushford. It's, and the connections between all of them from one parking area to the next is kind of unsafe. Not kind of unsafe, it's unsafe.
It
So
is
you're going
unsafe,
from
yeah.
one community use to another community use in a pretty chaotic and unsafe environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly that where it's like, oh, there's plenty of places to park. It's just walking from them that feels very uncomfortable. And as someone that grew up in Holliston, and I used to I lived on a main road, and I'd walk from one part of Holliston to the downtown on sidewalks the whole time, and I felt safe. That's like weird to me here, where I'm like, oh, I can't do that here. And I want that for my kids. And I feel like I was on Facebook this morning and looking at the Upton moms and dads group, and I wasn't looking for this issue, and they were talking about it on Grove Street. It's just like, it's right there. It's always being talked about. Just they really want that. So this, I'm just highlighting that there, that yes, we need parking, but we just need it to be easier to walk to too, because I think a lot of that, people just want to be able to safely walk there.
Mhm. Mhm.
They can keep going down, like, and then our town green. There was certainly an interest in people being there. There was so many people there that day. But then you look at the front of it and it's like, it feels a little bit like a cemetery. And I say this with all due respect, because these are obviously memorials to people that have died in war. So I like thought about this a lot. And it's like, do you move things? Do you consolidate them to one part? And it's like, no, it's probably better to just leave them as they are and just simply if they're those shrubs, I think became like grasses and they weren't like so tight, it would feel a lot more welcoming. It just looks like dated landscaping, which sounds funny, but it just makes me think of my grandparents. And that's a funny impression. And that in itself, I think is off-putting to, it just makes you think like, oh, you can't go in there. It's just like something for people that died. I don't know, to be very frank about it. So this is just my ideas on how you can make it feel a little bit more welcoming for when we do have events. In my ideal world, we'd have a way to make it bigger. I don't know how that could possibly be. I didn't write that down because that's just probably too fanciful. But
Yeah,
we need
Julie,
new trash. Oh, go ahead.
The planning term for that is hostile infrastructure or hostile architecture, right? So, in this sense, we're talking about plants, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, it is that.
I mean, one of the comments that I had put in the bullet points that I had sent to Michael earlier tonight was it's the whole downtown needs to be softened. It is the best way to describe, that I could figure out to describe it, which is, and that can only be done with plantings. It can be, and the use of wood or other, like when we have these guardrails that might be installed around parking areas or other things like that, using a palette of natural materials versus, these highly manufactured materials will do a lot to soften the look and feel, because it isn't very welcoming. So I agree 100%. The things that I saw too was in the connections. The connections are kind of obsolete. The church doesn't, we have a crosswalk at the church at Holy Angels, right? That church isn't active. What is active is the community center, and it's at the entrance or the gateway. Let's call it the gateway into the downtown, the downtown area. That seems to be the appropriate place to have both a crosswalk and kind of traffic slowing infrastructure. That idea of, Craig, that you said of a raised crosswalk there would do a tremendous amount to just slow traffic. As much as the whole issue of the rotary is supposed to slow traffic, a raised crosswalks would slow traffic even better. With that, and that seems to me to be what we're trying to accomplish. I am still having nightmares about a rotary being the dominant feature of our downtown, our downtown area.
So the town I lived for high school in, or the town over New London, New Hampshire, that I remember it was a weird intersection and they put in a rotary and it was actually really pretty. It wasn't bad. There was a lot of trepidation around it and it wasn't that bad in the end. It was actually a lot better. I was like, oh, why were we so worried about it? I can picture it here and I don't think it's going to be, because it'll slow everything down. And that's like the problem. If people are going too fast through here, we can do all these things and it's still going to make it uncomfortable. If people are going like 45.
And the state's getting pretty good at rotaries. For the record, the current plan for the 25% plan has a crosswalk sort of to the right of the community center, a new one. I don't think they really took that into account. It hadn't been built when they surveyed it. Deletes the crosswalk in front of the church, and then it's a whole forest of crosswalks around the rotary. Which we could raise, of course. And dividers, I don't see any plans for planting this. We could do that.
My understanding, though, is this is a roundabout, not a rotary.
Yes, that's the difference.
Correct.
This is a paved block, a round paved raised structure.
Yeah.
It's not in the sense of that doesn't, I don't think, have any ability to accommodate any plantings or anything like that. So to
So
me,
we
it's a
have to
it's a
advocate.
blob. Yeah, it's a blob of pavement.
I'd put some tubs in the middle. It's raised.
Well, we don't want
Anyway,
it to be an eyesore. Is that something we're going to be able to negotiate?
I'm sorry, rotary and roundabout have different meanings in different parts of the country. Washington State is different. So yeah, it is a
It's-
roundabout.
Roundabout, the difference between a roundabout and a rotary is a roundabout junctions two or more major routes and is of a particular size.
Oh, yeah.
This is a roundabout, or I'm sorry, I forget what I said. Did I say rotary first?
You said
I meant
roundabout.
to.
Oh.
A rotary connects two or more major routes and is larger in size than what is proposed here. A roundabout does not do that and is smaller. So that's why this is a roundabout.
Sorry,
It is an unimportant distinction to make, for sure.
we know what it is. Sorry, I put the version with the wrong name.
Yeah, no worries at all. Like I said, very unimportant. Gene, there is going to be a bit of a center to it that it might be possible to put in landscaping, but obviously you'd want to be very mindful of the type of landscaping for eyesight, like sight line, sight vision sort of thing. On the town, is it still on the town meeting agenda? It might not be. Joe and I have engaged some engineering firms to do a lot of what we're talking about right now, which is to identify the downtown area to soften its look because of the expanse of concrete that exists here. And not only because of what exists here currently, what is proposed with the TIP project.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. The introduction of the roundabout will expand, like just create a sea of concrete in the 25% plans. It's, from an aesthetic point of view, it's not going to look great if that were to be the final plan, right? But we're engaging an engineering firm to go through, identify how to soften it, how to introduce landscaping, how to introduce aesthetic lighting, and kind of a lot of what we're talking about tonight. So I'm, and that's why, Julie, I had forwarded this along to Joe to help inform that discussion that we're having with that engineering firm. Just a quick update on that. That's all.
Yeah, I was surprised that you sent it. I was very flattered that you sent it away right away, because I was figuring that you were just gonna. I wasn't expecting any sort of result beyond us talking about it here that quickly. So I was very excited how excited you guys were too. Because I'm hoping that we can somehow introduce that look of the faux brick, the concrete brick look into the rotary somehow, or the roundabout. I'm sorry. I will use the word roundabout. And that's when I think of the new London, New Hampshire roundabout. It probably was a roundabout. They had that same like look of brick in it, and it didn't feel like a concrete circle.
So, Mike, when you're talking about Article 14, I think, which is still on the warrant, $23,000.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, for the funding. Yep.
I think you can keep scrolling down.
Okay. Hold on. Okay.
Yep.
Do we go back past my trash cans? I don't know if I moved it, but that's a comical point.
No,
yeah, I did. I
this
did
was the
move it. I
next.
forget where I landed, but yeah, just suggestions on having places to sit, because that was the funny part. Is I had to sit one of the spots. I had to make up spots to sit just to look, and one of them was sitting at the Nevermind shop on the corner. I asked the owner, which I had found out like 20 minutes before from my husband, that they were closing, which they obviously have since closed, which is a bummer. But that also made me look at it a little bit different that day. I was like, okay, if the space is about to be vacant, what should this really be? And but back to what we're actually looking at right now, having places to sit it's just nice because that lets people know they're welcome, that we want people down there. They can sit. It would be great if there was, or they could go to the Soul Cafe, get their coffee, and just sit downtown and chat with their friend or do whatever. You have this great spot in front of the parking on Grove Street that's kids could run around or whatever and sit on a bench. Just seems like there's good opportunities in
Yes.
the small spots we have.
Yeah, so that area, one of the comments I had on the parking in general was that these bermed slopes, these kind of vacant slopes, aren't really a great use of space. You know, when we're parking constrained and also open space constrained, a slope isn't a usable surface generally. You know, so doing a raised patio with a retaining wall in that same within the property boundaries gives much more usable space and potentially an oversight view, you know, kind of what you're talking about, a place to sit and a place to overlooking something. It's really apparent the use of that. I don't think it was necessarily intentional, but the use of that design concept at the community center, if you go around to the back of the building, which not a lot of people do, it's quiet and it's comfortable. And it's, you know, has some visual interest. The same thing could be done at in the location where you have the picture of the wooden guardrail. And particularly over, you know, that has a, you know, potentially a nice little area to work with. On the side going towards Rushford's, that seems to me to call for a vertical wall to improve the parking infrastructure. You know, because that's a large slope. It's taking up a lot of space. You could see it when you had your overhead view. Back in the previous picture, you could really identify that as kind of wasted space isn't the right thing. You either need to make it visually interesting or make it useful.
Yeah.
You know?
And
Yeah.
Gene, can you remind me, does the town own that slice of land?
It owns where it's, you know, what it owns is that parking area, but that parking area is the slope goes out, I assume, to the property boundary, not the where the guardrail is, but substantially beyond where the guardrail is.
Do we own up to the river or not?
We
No.
own up to the river. We own up to the river where the gravel parking lot is.
Okay.
But not in that picture. We're looking mostly at the arcade building property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we do own up to the river behind the church, right? Which we have talked about, you know, incorporating into some sort of design as well.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's part of this, you know, the whole idea of doing. What's that?
Do we own this grassy knoll field that's pictured here that Julie took a picture of?
I don't know exactly where the property boundary is. I imagine it's at the end of where that wood chip slope is.
Oh, okay. So we don't own that field then.
No.
So it's like that's the part. It's like if you turn onto Grove Street, the parking lot's right there on your left, and it's like the grass is right in front of it. That's where that photo is taken. Just to give you an idea.
If you want,
land to own, because we could, you know, we would have potential for a parking area right there.
or more green space.
Yeah, more green space. Because to me, it's like
Yeah.
just a place to stop and like sit for,
Yeah.
in theory. Because if you have the right things there, the right businesses, it's nice to loiter. Usually you don't want people to loiter, but I feel like that's what we need. Places to loiter. There's
No,
this great-
you do want that to an
Yeah.
extent. You do.
Yeah.
If you want people to spend money in your downtown, yes.
Yeah. I have issues with what's the name of the green building? There must be a name for this. The Colonial Liquors Upton House of Pizza building. I'm sure one of you
Oh, I'm
knows.
not aware of a name of it. Is anybody else?
Craig, you must know.
I
Like
don't know if it has the name. I think it used to be a pharmacy or a drugstore.
Oh, was it
Mhm.
Wood
I don't know.
Pharmacy?
Yeah.
Woods
No, Woods Pharmacy.
was on the
that-
other side.
Right, was in West Upton Center.
Yeah.
That was
they
the,
moved. I think they
That's where the
moved,
Mexican restaurant is.
I think originally it was there, and then they moved to
Oh.
West Upton Center.
Craig, I do think you're right because I remember seeing a picture of it where that building used to have this big, beautiful front porch hanging off of
Yeah.
it.
That's
And with, like-
amazing. So I have
Yeah, anyway.
I like another issue for a different day about that, but it's like trying to stay in the scope on project
yeah.
in a different document. But just beyond that, obviously, is this little Upton Center sign. And if you turn out towards the river, beyond the guardrail, there's this little, I don't know what it is. I don't understand it.
It's the dam controls. It's the
Okay.
control. It's the flow control structure for the impoundment, the pond.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a flood control. It's a flood control structure.
I wish it could be an overlook. It would be amazing if you could just like go out there and look out again, like all the dreams. I was like, that'd be cool if you could just stand there and be like, oh, this is a beautiful little spot. Because you don't even realize that there's a river right there, just the way it's kind of boxed in.
And if you go on the other side of it and go down below below the church,
I did.
You lose a lot of the noise from the road, and you get the noise of the flowing water.
Yeah, it was beautiful down there. I had a lot of fun. I really just kind of wandered around because once from you guys, I know what we own. So I felt comfortable doing that because you don't know that if you don't have that inside information. So I did kind of wander down there and stood around and kind of dreamed just different scenarios. That is a complex property, and I do think Craig and his the other people that came up with that proposal have a really cool idea. You can go to the next page. The light fixtures. I think it needs to be something that feels historic. There's a lot of different black fixtures out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be something like, I don't want it to be too Victorian, but it would make sense if it's something that either matches the town hall lights, or either the town hall light post needs to change with it. Like it all needs to look the same is kind of my point. And this picture on the left was something I came across in my research, and I was like, oh, this has all the things. It's got it's got that like brick pattern in the crosswalk. It's got this inset brick patterning in their sidewalk, and it's got inset planters with these beautiful trees. It's got nice benches, and it's got pretty lampposts. So it just wanted to give some sort of guidelines, ideas for what to look for, and then just looking towards actual historic lights of this era. I feel like that's always the best thing to do. Is like what would have been. Obviously, you don't want something that's from the 1800s, but what was the style then in the later half of the 1800s for this period? And then the trash cans are just comical. Like that one made my husband laugh when he saw me working on this, because it's like obviously it's like an oil barrel that someone just like spray painted. Like nothing against the DPW, they work hard, but it's very functional. I feel like we could do something. This was like a $400 trash can that I found online. It's like it could just be something simple.
Looks like you have a good fire in that trash can.
Yeah, many times over you could. Yeah. And then I'm sure many people have talked about this sidewalks, which is something in my like sidebar agenda item. I don't know how much you want to dig into this, but I feel very strongly about this, and I touched on it a little bit earlier. I know a lot of people do in this town.
Again, the tip. It proposes a 5-foot wide asphalt sidewalk all the way from William Street to Elm Street, on both sides of the road. But it's asphalt, and
it's ugly.
Tip project on Hartford Street got into trouble for not being ADA accessible. So the pole in the middle here, I hope won't be there next time.
It's so absurd.
Yeah, but 5 foot wide luckily is the entire length of the project, both sides of the road. But unhappily, it won't be pretty.
The asphalt part makes me sad, because right before I moved out of Framingham, they redid the sidewalks on a road, and they're beautiful. They weren't all asphalt. And I know it's a very different budget in Framingham, but it'd be great in our downtown. we shouldn't have asphalt at the very least in our downtown. It shouldn't be like black asphalt sidewalks. It looks
Hey,
horrible
hey.
in Hopkinton with the black bike lane, and that the people are always complaining about that in the town group too on that.
Medfield relaid their sidewalks as brick in 1982, just before we moved there. So, it can be done.
Yeah. I don't know if I would, it needs to be brick, but even if it's just like the white classic sidewalk, would be nicer. And I don't know if I had really noticed the poles in the center until I watched a family go, and it was ironic because it's my car that was parked all the way down because it was filled earlier, and then they have to go around my car in the street to get around. And I was like, oh my God, I did not even notice it. And then when I was driving down Main Street the other day, there are sidewalks my son had said to me, there's no sidewalks on 140. I'm like, oh, there are sidewalks. I just didn't notice it because the telephone poles are in the middle all the way down to his school from the main road. It's just crazy that somebody ever said that's okay, that you do it like that. So yeah, this is something I wanted to point out. And then we have this sidewalk.
Yeah, that's absolutely an ADA no-no. I don't know how it's still.
I know who was on duty that day that was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Just put it right in the middle. It's okay. That was obviously a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then here, if we're going to revamp things, it'd be great if this could be wide enough so that if this building really got a huge amount of money put into it and they made it snazzier and they could have a good business in there, like a restaurant or a cafe of some kind, if they could have an outdoor restaurant, that'd be amazing. I feel like that would do well there if the parking was figured out.
Yep.
And then signs, just probably. Honestly, I think if you just painted the Upton Community Calendar sign board there black, I think the actual woodwork is fine to like fit the look. I think it'd just be that simple. It's probably more eye-catching with the blue.
I think there was that robin's egg blue like in the town hall before they redid it. Is that am I correct in that? Anybody?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so that's why that's still it just never got updated here.
Oh, that's
No,
funny.
you're exactly right. It doesn't match at all.
Yeah. And then this is me just being like, hey, let's go one step further, and you got to ask for more so that there's something to cut. I found this in a document that was online that somebody had rendered with visioning with the Heritage Park, and
That was
that
part
there'd
of
be
the,
like a
that
path.
was, that was part of the downtown visioning project.
Yeah, I was like, that's a great
Yeah.
idea. Let's throw that in there. So I plop that in there. Having a gazebo. This is a gazebo from the town I was talking about before, New London, New Hampshire, that I love. They have a giant town green there. That was beautiful. So just pulling in places I've been that I loved. Dream World. I don't know where you'd put it, but having a splash pad would be really cool. Again, I have no idea where, but be a great draw. And then
Where's
if we're
that from?
paying
Do you know?
that one, I can't remember where it was actually from. I had to search for a while to find a good one that wasn't just like overkill, a giant city image. Like this felt something obtainable and looked like us, looked like Upton to me.
Yeah.
And then just other towns that I felt like were good points of reference and kicking kind of the ball again. If we're paying a firm as much money as I see that we pay them, I want them to give us more examples, because this is me just like skimming the surface. There's so much more work that could be done. So just, I went to Boulder this summer and I was like, Boulder's beautiful. They have a ton of the same materials, and they had an awesome downtown. It's again huge, way bigger than here, but there's little pieces you can take away. Woodstock, Vermont has a lot of the same beautiful charm. It's got a great downtown. Pittsfield, Mass, I know had a big revitalization with their downtown too, and they have a great website about how they overhauled their town. If anyone's interested, it's really inspiring. And
If I
this,
could do one thing from your entire document, it would be these brick crosswalks with the white outlines. I think it's beautiful.
yeah, you can tell I feel strongly about that. That's like the
It
biggest.
really attracts the eye. Yeah.
It does. And you see it in some of the other towns around here too. It's just nice. And it's like striking when you come into the town. It's like, oh, there's their downtown too. It's like there's no doubt about it. And
Grafton has stamped brick, much like at the Pittsfield crosswalk right there,
Mhm.
in their green. So the town green is like crossed like a T with they're not sidewalks, but walkways, and it is that stamped brick.
Actually, that's actual brick. The
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's actual brick.
Look at me not giving Grafton credit.
Yeah, well, but they did do that down at the Fisher Rail Mill site at my project. It is,
Oh, okay.
and it does slow traffic.
Eh.
It's like a visual cue. It's like that's what I was saying. If the sidewalk was at entering into town was at the edge of the community center, going across to the sidewalk on north of 140, then that would be a visual cue to slow down. And if
Yeah.
it was raised, there'd be more. And the same thing is true of the crosswalk at the far side of the town hall towards the Racine building. Would also do the very same thing.
Yeah.
Really help define the downtown area.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
eventually
Yeah.
West Upton, we could do the same thing.
Yeah, and I
The
think
West
there
End.
does need to be, I have noticed that there have been some changes coming into town with a flashing speed sign, which I think is really, I've noticed is slowing traffic somewhat. I think the same thing needs, the same kind of flashing signage needs to be used at some of the critical crosswalks. And that's something that can be done in the short, kind of in the short term. It's like particularly that one at the community center.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If we do one there.
now a mobile, but permanent ones sound good too.
So that was really great, Julie. And
Oh,
like I
yeah.
said, one of the things that, like I said, struck me is that, the task or the homework assignment was to talk about the parking.
And I did kind of around it, but yeah.
That's why I started the conversation the way I did, because what you did and what I'm seeing is that, our downtown is parking. It is pavement, and it needs to be, the concept is to talk about what we can do creatively with the parking. It's really how do we use the parking to better create a downtown environment? How do we get multiple purposes out of those parking, that parking infrastructure, and make it, since it is so dominant, to make it visually attractive and somewhat environmentally responsible.
Yeah.
So I had just what I had done is put together just a bunch of bullets of what I thought we really should be trying to incorporate from kind of into three major categories: safety, then design, infrastructure design, and aesthetics and environment. Is broad strokes. And my thought on that was, okay, thank you, thanks, Mike. So the municipal parking lots, and it's kind of the interconnection of uses is critical. So the sidewalks are really multifunctional structures as well. They, as we were just describing it, they define the downtown area, but they're also the main connections between social or public use. So trying to integrate, keeping that as a design concept, making sure that you have well-maintained sidewalks between uses, as opposed to crosswalks just because a crosswalk is supposed to be there.
Mhm.
And a very kind of I know that's subtle, but
that was a really good call out. I hadn't thought about that. You're right, the location should change. No one's going to that church anymore.
Right. So that's one of the things. And the crosswalks, as I said, should be clearly signed, and we need them, to do both connect the spaces, be safe, but also create safety in the environment. And that's why, flashing visual signals to me seems to be critical. they're obnoxious. Yeah, I wouldn't want to put it in front of a residence, but we're not talking about doing that. You know.
Well, you can also have it be like it's triggered. They're not flashing all the time. They're just
Yeah.
when you're going to use them, you activate them.
So
Yeah, and-
just to interject, because that's come up multiple times, the 25% design does show the basically elimination of that crosswalk that we're talking about and pushing it closer to where the roundabout will be. So that'll be where the crosswalk is, and it will have the flashing sign that is activated by push with signage. So
That's good. Yay.
Is that
A
like the
win.
picture you put in the chat there, Michael? Is that?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that the crosswalk that you're talking about? Is that like the picture that I put in the chat?
I'm not sure.
Let's check out your chat.
That's the picture I put in the chat
Wow.
is kind of like the one that I was referring
No.
to. That's in Amherst, where it's raised, and then it on the slope it has flashing lights that come out, but they're only activated when you push the button and someone's trying to cross. So it kind of cuts down on. I mean, I kind of my heart kind of goes out to the people who have those signs right in front of their house with their flashing all the time, 24 hours. That must drive them nuts. So that would kind of cut down on that maybe, but.
So no,
Yeah.
it's not what you provided there, but it is the just a crosswalk with the push activated flashing. I don't think the DOT is going to recommend the raised crosswalks on state highway, but it's something that certainly can be explored with them and asked.
Yeah, it's probably worth asking, because if people know that they have to drive over a raised sidewalk, that will significantly slow the rate that they're driving, and because they drive really fast on that road sometimes. So
Even
Yeah.
with Gene saying though, like the illusion with the stamped concrete brick, and I would say that over actual brick, because the actual brick requires a lot more maintenance than the stamped concrete brick that looks like brick, because it's not like actually gonna get wonky. It's just like stamped in there. That I think you're just like, oh, I need to slow down because it looks like it's gonna be something that's gonna be
Yep.
an issue for your car.
And so, yeah, and your point about the lighting and telephone poles, I hadn't even thought about that. I didn't see, had not had that picture that you had of the telephone poles in the middle of the sidewalk.
It was the
Yeah.
family that it stood
Yeah.
out. It was like, holy crap, just watching
So
them.
that is, as well as being well lit with it. I mean, it wouldn't even make any difference if it was well lit. You have to almost either have to step out into the road, which kind of defeats the purpose of the sidewalk.
It was a big deal on the Route 140. On the Hartford Avenue tip. Dave Russ was incensed about the way the telephone poles were in the way of anybody's wheelchair.
Yeah, and I can understand that completely.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the safety issues. I think there are other safety issues that could be more clearly defined and elucidated. I think on the infrastructure side, since we're talking about the gravel parking area and the work that's being done with the ANRAD, the resource delineation and everything, will guide in some senses some of the infrastructure that can be built and how it can be built. But one of the things I just recently read in terms of electric vehicles and their use is that retailers that have electric charging stations in front or nearby their businesses have found a dramatic increase in patronage. And I see that almost everywhere that I see electrical charging stations. They've become, they're sought after, and the wait time, you're there for 15 to 30 minutes, really encourages use of the area around it, because nobody wants to just sit in their car, while it charges.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they're charging their car, but they're doing something else. So one of the things that really made me think again and back about the social uses of these parking lots and how these parking lots can enhance social behavior including shopping or visiting our businesses, economic development wise, is that wherever we have a municipal parking lot, we should have at least, and there's funding, and incentives to do this. We should have, charging stations. There should be 2 charging stations, in my mind, at each of the municipal parking lots, whether it's at the community center or right next to Rushford's or the existing, the parking lot next to Town Hall.
Yeah.
I think it would really enhance the use of downtown, give us more of a green flavor, and also help the businesses. I also think that clearly, leads into canopies, solar canopies, and where possible, because the other thing is we have no shade downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Shade is another. We have lots of pavement, but no shade. So even if you wanted to sit, you're not going to sit out in the middle of the sun in a hot summer New England day. So trying to get shaded either through natural use of trees or through solar canopies, I think that would be another great thing that should be incorporated into any design element we entertain. Then when we do the ANRAD, we're going to show that all of one of the results is going to be all of the gravel parking lot is in the floodplain. So there should be, if there aren't, some restrictions on the type of surfaces that will be acceptable, from a permitting perspective. Permeable pavements in that area make all the sense in the world. Again, they can be visually attractive. That what you were describing about the brick.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually incorporate grass into some permeable pavements.
Oh yeah.
Pavement structures.
Yeah.
So
Those can be very attractive. Actually, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like it comes through, like the little planter type of things. Like
exactly, and you don't have to use grass. There's lots of other type of plants.
Yeah,
that
like micro clover.
Right, that are very durable. And floodwater and water control in the downtown area is going to be a big part of whatever redesign is required. You have because of all the pavement, you have a lot of surface water runoff. And that runoff right now, the way it's managed, it discharges directly into the brook, which it shouldn't be doing, not without treatment. And so rain gardens need to be incorporated into this parking infrastructure design, and both to treat water from the parking area, but water from the roadways before being discharged into the brook. So because we're going to be trying to make the brook and the parking associated around the brook into visually attractive, social environments. Mm-hmm. So that also is like, so your planting design, the type of plants you use, all of those things are, critically important. And where those slopes were, the slopes that I was talking about, they cut significantly into the usable parking area. They cut significantly into the usable social area. You can't set up a table, you can't set up a chair, they're just not highly useful. You can do permeable retaining walls, and those permeable retaining walls can be planted with things that are like, for example, we visited years ago in San Francisco. They have a scent garden for the blind, and you can plant vertical walls with thyme, oregano, really hardy plants that survive in, basically in sand. And when you brush up against them, the scent of the plant is released. So there's a lot. Like, again, how do we make these, what's normally considered barren, into something that's vital?
I love that, and that's something to draw people in, that they want to go and investigate. And
the kids will want to touch it and brush their hands against it, and it could be kind of a cool thing. And you have to incorporate seating into that, as you described, right? And where we have the stream bank between Rushford, both on the Rushford side of things and the town parking lot side of things, there's no excuse not to have trees there. Whether it's river birch or willows, to make it, to make those things, make that into a really visually attractive space.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, again, softening those things. And it also improves the water habitat.
Yeah.
And then kind
I'm
of
very
the,
excited. This is very
so
exciting.
there was, so there's some other things too, but this is kind of the discussion I wanted to have. We're going to have, at some point, we will be guiding a design team that, whenever an award is allowed for, for the redesign of the downtown parking, we want to give them really, I think, strong guidance. Otherwise, it's going to be a cookie cutter approach, like what we, was shown at the beginning of our meeting tonight, of here's a parking plan. We don't need a parking plan. We need something that's going to implement some of the social goals and environmental goals of the downtown visioning process. So, here we have this little parking lot that somehow I'm trying to create into a big change. That I would like to see somehow create a large change in how downtown is used. And one of the other things I thought about, and kind of goes to your point, Julie, about, you were at an event, and I started thinking about, other places I have been where they convert a parking lot into an event space. And if you design appropriately and using the permeable pavement, you could have designed that for 100 by 210 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden that becomes a place for, you can incorporate the, like the Heritage Day or other events into a visually attractive parking lot, and have shelter for for covered portions of it. We'll be parking challenged if we use the parking that way.
Yeah.
But we now have the Racine building where parking is going to be available. You have the other parking lot, if we change that a little bit, that could also be used. So I think it's just really a strong opportunity for a creative effort to really change what our pavement footprint looks like, and green it up, soften it up, make it somehow a little bit of a, I can't say it, parking should not be a destination, but it's where you end up. We're a vehicle centric society, and all of our social activities are around those parking areas. So somehow incorporating some better design concepts into that is really critical in my mind. And we're right at the point where we're going to have some of the work done on this, right? I mean, we have the release of the earmarks coming up.
Mhm. Yep.
The stretch of land that's in between the maybe once wood pharmacy building, maybe we'll just call it the old wood pharmacy building, and the town green, there's like a little stretch of pavement. Is that theirs or the town's? Do we know? There's like a little bit of, and they have a couple of.
Yeah, I think that is technically a right of way. That was like a road at some point, but it was abandoned. So
And they just put like markers in it so no one can drive through it.
yeah, I don't know the status of it currently. Dennis Westgate, our DPW director, would know. I feel like it was abandoned and then likely split when that happened, split half and half between town on one side and the old pharmacy building, we'll say, on the other side.
Because that's like a miss spot too. And that their HVAC equipment is so loud when you're sitting there. It's like ridiculous. They need to upgrade that, but because that could be more parking in theory, or just more green space for the common. It's just kind of neither here nor there. It's a weird no man's land.
So years ago, a couple years back, Gene, we had spoken about putting some sort of a pedestrian bridge to unify Grove Street to the VFW ball fields. And we kind of got caught up in the idea that it was going to be further to the left or more toward the center of the Grove Street parking lot. And as such, the cost to create a path that would be ADA compliant would be pretty prohibitive, if not ridiculous. But unifying that lower space to the community center via some sort of a walkway. Is that still an option that possibly could be feasible with that,
Yeah, so
with the new study to determine what is reserved for
I think
non-development?
I do think that is feasible, because one of the things that I started thinking about is that, you know, the space adjacent to the a brook, we're not going to be able to develop. That doesn't mean doesn't mean we can't use it, and that's an important distinction. Okay.
Okay.
So a use as an ADA compliant brook walk, right right close to the edge of the brook, with seating, with a brick walkway or something like that, like Julie has pointed out, to the back of the church, and then creating a continuous kind of a serpentine walk back up to the existing sidewalk. It would allow you to take the sidewalk experience from the street side to the brook side.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wouldn't necessarily have to have a bridge. You'd have to have some sort of agreement with the owners of the arcade building, but that's not usable land for them. It really wouldn't matter. And right now they're currently using, you can see in the overhead, Mike and I talked about this earlier this week, you can see in the overhead picture that Julie had in her presentation, they are using the town parking lot as access to that area. They have their own access, I think, as well, Mike and I talked about, but I think they're using the town's property to bring in the trailers and the other things, that the storage container that's back there, the other things. So, it certainly seems like there's some negotiating potential around the use of that property.
Look at that. That was just Google Maps that I found that photo. So
I was just thinking more toward the Rushford side of the Grove Street parking lot, and to try and get as close that way, because then it would be connecting the people that come in from town to play ball at the VFW field. They could park at that Grove Street also and be able to get to the Grove Street. And then for those that are bumped out from the parking lot at the top of the community center, they could use Grove Street and just be able to traverse a semicircular path.
I agree. I agree. In fact, funnily enough, I was sitting, we take our grandkids to the playground all the time there and to the community center. And after one of the games, the younger, the Utes were a little rambunctious, and they decided they didn't want to walk on the sidewalk, though, so they traversed the brook and, proceeded to fall in and made a great experience of it. But I mean, it's being used. The brook is being used as a pathway from one parking lot to another. I mean, there's a fallen tree that's really attractive as a bridge right now that goes across there. So, it's like, so that, there's no question there's got to be a way to connect these things. And we get hung up on the details. People say, why are you building a bridge to nowhere? It's like, well, because sometimes a bridge to nowhere really is pretty attractive, and it
be
brings
a Boy Scout project.
Right. And the other thing is that, certainly people with disabilities should have the right and the opportunity to experience the natural environment, not on a paved, on a paved sidewalk right next to a speeding roadway. They should have the opportunity to enjoy that, the brook and the area behind the brook and the adjacent wetlands in a way that, they can't experience otherwise. So I don't think it's a bad thing to go back to think about that bridge. If we could find grant funding for it, if we could do something with it, again, it makes we need more green opportunities, more natural environment in the town center, particularly with what's going on with the TIP project. And it
might just be like a later phase. It's like we could prioritize, the level of importance. Just because it's not seen readily. It's something important, but
but it all ties into the use of the church, which, and the Holy Angels, and what, Craig and others want to do. Why maintain Holy Angels if the rest of the place around it is going to be visually unattractive?
Yeah.
It's like, it has to be a cohesive, concept of design and social use, in businesses being incorporated into that, as well as the public uses. Town center. I'm in Stowe this weekend, Stowe, Vermont, and Route 100, a major route with the same amount of traffic as 140, goes right through the center of town, and the center of that town, this town, is
Beautiful.
vital. It's packed with tourists. The sidewalks are bricked. The people take pride in the churches and that are on the main street, and they figured out parking, and they make parking, the parking connection for everybody of all abilities.
Mhm.
So and it's not enormously expensive. What they did do, which was enormously expensive, was they put all their utilities underground, all their
Yeah.
power lines. They did that.
That would be
3 years.
lovely. Yeah, in the downtown.
That's just enormously expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like, I don't want to lose sight of the agenda. I thought that, we're the biggest thing that we have control of this year and we have funding for, is this parking lot redesign. And so the work that you did, Julie, I think galvanizes me to think more and more about the design elements of it. And it's what we should be, one of the things we really should be focusing on. This is a deliverable. This is something we can deliver to the town and we can engage people with.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think what you did too is like the other piece of it, because I kind of danced around it, and you're like, okay, here's the parking part of it too, because I'm like, here's all the other things that you can do that to make the parking work. Because in my mind, I'm like, all right, just like paint the lines, like pave the parking lot. But you're right, it's more nuanced than that. So I appreciate that you did the other deep thinking around it, because I feel like together that's a really good plan.
And I think I think it accentuates the potential use of Holy Angels. The area behind Holy Angels is going to be the most visually attractive part of that building, other than the facade.
Yeah.
It's the same thing of, when you go into the community center, when you look out the back of those big bank of windows, do you want to be looking at a parking lot, or do you want to be looking at a parking lot that looks like a park?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I love that community center. It's so beautiful. And that parking, we love that, the playground. It's so great there.
So I think, all of this ties together in our work for this year. And I think we're on the precipice of, Mike, of being able to start engaging with designers and, engineers with regard to this. So you've gotten bids now on the Holy Angels and the ANRAD work, right?
The not necessarily ANRAD work, but the BSC is doing Holy Angels, and they were out in the field doing resource delineation. So I mean, that, I suppose that can just be folded into a submittal to Concom to be the ANRAD. So ANRAD. So that work's underway. I've already contracted with them, obviously. I'll probably have an update, hopefully maybe from them, maybe at our next meeting, to provide some a draft of some kind, maybe, and to solicit some feedback from this committee. So if not November, maybe December. What I was going to suggest to the committee, Gene, is based on the conversation, and we're sort of moving away from a parking plan, a parking study, in the way that I've understood a parking plan, parking study, which is more of a technical analysis than it is a design analysis, right? It's on the town meeting warrant for funds to go to an engineering firm to do a good amount of what we discussed tonight. So it makes sense for me to bring this conversation back to the town manager to fold in more of this into that work. And I'm sure we can, if the committee is amenable, we can again amend the earmarks in order to steer money away from a parking plan in the way that it is imagined or understood, and more towards this beautification, I'll say, aesthetic
Yeah.
improvements of the downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, parking design, I would say, what we want is not a parking plan, but a parking design. Anybody can draw lines, and anybody can draw the radius, and any engineer is going to be able to calculate the safe radius of return,
Yeah.
what the space, all of that that's easy. The difficult part is incorporating, the social aspect into that parking plan, and that's, so I think the design of this is much more important. The design elements are much more important than the engineering elements, in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of expanding the geographic scope of what we had originally talked to the engineer about. I mean, we were talking about basically specifically the area around the roundabout, and also we were talking about doing like a master plan, again, more of an aesthetic analysis master plan for the town green, and to mirror it the front of the Racine. That grassy area in the front of the Racine, and doing some design elements in order to create, again, what we're talking about here. So I think it's just a matter of expanding that scope a bit.
Yeah. So really that like first page of my document too is like the materials. That's why I started with that, because I was like, even if these other things feel a little bit sidebarred, I wanted you to be able to have that one page to like pass along to.
No, I mean, this conversation just solidifies that document as basically a document of this committee, right? Because I'm hearing a lot of agreement on what is presented and what is discussed, and that what you already put together has already been forwarded to the engineer, and so just keeping that as a touchstone going forward for ideas and how to incorporate elements of design is perfect.
And Michael, I think it's important that you should take this, even in its embryonic state, but also as we improve it, to any contacts you have with the DOT to say, this is where we're going. Can you adapt the plan? Is there any way of influencing your plan?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing already but we'll expand the scope, obviously. But as it pertains to the TIP project, we wanted these design elements included before, obviously, the state gets to their 100% design, right? So all of this, what we're talking about, can be incorporated, and if it can't be incorporated, the necessary space can be dedicated for future inclusion.
The time is exactly right, especially as they've delayed it by 2 years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, guys, I sent around. I have a hard stop at 8:30, and I have to join another meeting. I think, there's a couple of things on the agenda that could be covered, and there's 4 people left, so I think we have a quorum if I leave. Correct, Michael?
Yeah.
So does anybody want to take over the meeting right now?
I like as vice chair.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks so much. I really appreciate all the work that everybody's done, both on the lab stuff and Julie on this other things. It really stimulated my imagination a little bit.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, great. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Shane.
Bye.
Okay, I propose we don't follow all of the agenda because time moving on.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have anything to say on the West Upton Center Vision earmarks?
Oh, no. I mean, it's highly dependent on, it'll be dependent on my discussion with the town manager about what I just was speaking about, which is expanding the scope of that engineer services for the design elements. But I mean, I think if this committee is what do we dedicate? I sent out the earmark dedications as a part of the package, but let me just bring it up to refresh myself, because I think it's going to be a matter of just, do we dedicate another $10,000 or $15,000 formally towards that service and away from something else? by which I'm thinking that we can because of this discussion tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Where is it? Where is it? Just going through my
Do you want me
stuff.
to share it? Would that make your life slightly? I can share it if you want.
Oh, do you already have it up?
Yeah, I can. Here,
Yeah.
pick like one thing. Ooh, wrong one. This, right?
Yeah, we said the parking plan is 55,000. I mean, if I think we're dedicating 30,000 is what it was at the town meeting warrant. But either way, if that money gets approved, that's going to slash that cost significantly as well. So we and then also with the so that almost takes that completely away because I'm already doing a lot of that with with BSC Group as well. So Dodson Flinker I think was 60 or 65,000. Julie, do you have the Dodson Flinker?
Ooh.
I have it.
I know I do. I just don't know if I have it like at my fingertips.
That's fine.
I don't think I have it at my fingertips.
If somebody could just read what the number was that they quoted us.
55133.
What is it?
55133.
Oh, okay. And I think there were some add-ons, weren't there? Is there a higher price, or is that with all the add-ons?
Oh, actually, okay, 75168, and there are some options. Do not create a final report, would say 15,000. I think they were the final report. So, final public forum, focus groups. I don't want to cut those. So,
no,
that's their cheap version. So 75,000, just over.
75,000. So we had already dedicated or assumed 50,000, right? So I think we can. Do you just kind of want to make a vote that, pending the cost of number one and the fact that that's being a large portion of that is already being taken care of by a grant, and then the other part of it is probably being taken care of mostly, hopefully, but if town meeting approves it, I think you'll eliminate that entire $55,000 line item in the earmark budget. So do you want to vote contingent upon that, putting an extra $25,000 towards the Dodson Flinker plan?
Well, okay, and then what about the other 30? It's one thing that fell by the wayside was phase 2 of the facade improvement. Did we have any customers tentatively last year?
I believe we canceled the phase 2 because we took that money and we moved it into the first element of the parking plan and engineering with the intent of including more money for ANRAD, because we thought that if we got that completed, then what it gave us is it gave us one completed ANRAD that would be in place and be able to be served in the future and save us money in the long run, in place of having to revisit and redo components again and again and again for a complete ANRAD study for that area.
So we've got 30,000. Sorry. 30,000 rattling around now. Well, first of all, let's make it 76,000 so we can round up their estimate. But now we have about 30,000 rattling around. Anybody have any better ideas than start a facade phase 2?
Well, is that 30,000 going to cover the ANRAD in its entirety? Because again, the component of getting it, the objective of getting it done in one phase to save money in the long term, in place of having to redo different components of it along the way, was why we shifted the $15,000 into that line item and took away the facade program, if memory serves me correctly.
I'm lost now.
We thought it made better long-term sense to move the monies from the facade earmark into the ANRAD.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So do we still need to keep some money for the ANRAD filing?
Well, that's
Michael?
my concern is I don't want to
Yeah.
shortchange that because that was the objective of getting it all done in one pass, was that it would save us money in the long term.
Assuming it was all done the right way the first time.
Not so much done the right way, but all done at the first pass, because as I understand it, and Gene was more versed in this, so I really I'm trying to go off of memory, but there are components to being able to get the plan in place, and if you do a smaller section, then what you have to do is you have to go back and revisit those same introductory components again, so you incur those same expenses versus
see.
if those and I think they're filing expenses and things of that nature, because and then once the ANRAD was in place, it gave us a 10 or a 15-year window that was in place, and then we could use that and wouldn't have to go back and redo it
So
again.
because we have the right to move it again, I move that we shift 26,000 from line item 1 to line item 2 and leave the remaining 29 as a contingency in case we need it for the NRAD. Make sense?
And I think, I mean, through the work that BSC is doing, they're doing the wetland resource delineation. That should be the information that is submitted to conservation for the ANRAD. I think the cost that'll be borne by that is just the cost of filing, which I don't think is going to eat up a ton. And if I need to find money elsewhere for just filing an ANRAD with Concom, I don't think we'll have an issue doing that.
We'll leave 29 of that line and we can pull from it later. Just make it simpler. We can cover the cost of Dodson and Finca for 76. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I'm in the chair. Anyone to propose moving
And Michael,
26,000?
so Michael, you're comfortable moving the 26 out of the first priority and putting it in the second to cover the full weight of the Dodson Flinker, and then leaving the rest in what we need for the engineering plan and the ANRAD. We're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot.
I don't think so, and that because I have the BSC group as I've gotten a grant for $50,000. That's knocking out most of that number of priority number 1. So we're not even touching that money, right? So that's a large portion of that you'd be saving, and then if we fold the parking plan, which we're now pivoting to really be an aesthetic analysis of the downtown parking, not so much a parking plan. That's money that we will likely have after town meeting in the form of 30,000 or whatever the warrant article is for, and that'll knock out the rest of that. And there might be, I don't have exact numbers to work with here for that because I don't. But I have to imagine it's going to be economies of scale if we're giving them a slightly larger scope than what they'd be providing. And by the way, it's not that much larger. I mean, they're already doing all the way from the community center down to the Racine. So that's much of the area that we've already talked about tonight. I think with those two things, that entire line item of $55,000 has gone away in a good way, because you're not going to be expending that money out of this anymore. That's money that's going to be left over.
Yeah, but okay. Then read Title 1 as currently unallocated deferred discussion at 29,000. I'll take them. Okay, I'll accept a motion. Line 1, unallocated 29,000, currently unallocated. Line 2, 76,000.
I propose, I'd like to put a motion ahead that we allocate $26,000 out of priority 1 and move it to priority number 2, and leave $29,000 in the priority 1 as a a safety requirement to make sure that we have enough funds to cover the ANRAD.
I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Julie?
I seconded.
Roll
Julie.
call. Yeah, Julie, aye.
Hi,
Yeah.
Julie.
Craig?
I,
David, aye. Okay, unanimous. Michael, do you have anything to add on Holy Angels apart from what was in your report?
Nope.
Solar, that's
Nothing.
Solar is Gene's ballpark. Oh.
Yep.
Hi, Julie. You can stop sharing your screen now.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, you're seeing all my things. Yeah. I was like, what is he? I was trying to get back to my agenda.
Okay. Design guidelines we're just done. Discussion adding other projects. Julie, is there anything else you
So
want to add?
this
on
is-
other projects?
It's a bigger thing. I don't know if you guys really want to get into it tonight because I don't want to derail the whole thing. I just going downtown and it spurred other ideas that honestly, I don't know if I have the bandwidth to go over all of them right now.
Oh no, yes, that's your email dated October 16th, 8:01. We'll defer that to next meeting.
That's good.
Revisit goals of ED strategy. I don't have anything new. I assume, Michael, you're still working on the small business uptake. No? Okay, nothing new there. No other topics. No audience. Next meeting. I chair meetings like this, right? I've always done when I was working, which is 9.5 years ago now. No nonsense.
It worked.
Yeah. So
Is which one's Thanksgiving? Is it 21st, 28th? I think it's the 28th.
Let me open my calendar. It is the 28th is
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. So the 21st
28th.
would be the one before.
So 21st.
Sure.
Okay. Thursday, November 21st at 7 p.m. EDC.
Yeah.
We've discussed future agenda items. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
David, aye. Craig?
I.
Yeah.
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Motion adjourned.
Have a good night.